Welcome to the Catholic Table Talk podcast. This is where everything Catholic is on the table. New episodes Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on most podcast platforms. Here's your host, William Sauber.
Well, welcome back to the show indeed, everyone, here at Catholic Table Talk podcast. So thankful that you are able to join us again for episode 162. Thank you for your continued support. If you have a show topic, or speak request, or if you want to become a sponsor of the show, please email us at catholictt@gmail.com. It's the official email of Catholic Table Talk and the fastest way to get a hold of us. You can also message us on most social media platforms, as well as drop a comments to the platform where you're listening right now, and we'll reach out to you as soon as we can with those questions and that feedback. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode far and wide, because it will be an episode that you probably want to like and share it. Real quickly, before we get to today's episode, today's sponsor is Dr. George Saguma from South Dakota. Dr. George, he practices hostile health and healing for people. He visits prisons and spreads the gospel that way. Visit him online at drgeorge.com. Again, it's Dr. George Saguma. So, Dr. George, good friend of the show, thank you again for sponsoring today's episode. And again, for sponsorship, email us for more information. All right. Well, today's episode is a very exciting and emotional one for me, folks. If you have not heard, my family and I are moving, so this is the last episode that we are doing here in the original Studio T, before we pack up Studio T and move it. So this is emotional, but it's all things change for the better, as like they always say. And today we have our youngest guest so far on the show. Now, the previous youngest guest was my brother, and we talked a lot about ultra servings, conferences, just kind of what brothers do. And I ran across this young man, 16 years old. He has his own business, a very entrepreneurship guy right here today. His name is Will Henry, and he has a company. He owns a company called Wings of the Lord, and they make their own rosaries, and they're very beautiful rosaries, and he'll probably talk a little bit more about them. But a little bit about him. He started Wings of the Lord with hopes of bringing people closer to Mary. He lives in Western North Carolina with his four younger siblings and his dog. On weekends, he loves throwing mass at his church. And after school, he enjoys playing golf, designing websites, wakeboarding, and of course, making rosaries. So this guy is not afraid to work. And like I said, we ran across him on social media and reached out to him. And he very generously reached out back and said, yes, I'll come on the show. So let's welcome to the show the Wings of the Lord owner, Will Henry. So, Will, again, thank you for coming on the show today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, I ran across your great business on the National Catholic Register, which, again, if you're familiar with the show, everyone who's listening, I've done a lot of shows on articles on the National Catholic Register, so I kind of try to keep up the best I can on there, and that's where I ran across Will. So, I mean, Will, Wings of the Lord, how did you start your company, and why did you start your company?
Yeah. It's I think the story is almost more valuable to me than the actual company because I just love the way like it all came about. So when I was serving, one of my friends, um, Steven, he's significantly older than me, but like we were serving all the time, and I love business and he loves business, so we kind of hit it off. And he introduced me to a rosary called the Irish Penal Rosary, which, when you look on my website, you'll see it's like a 1 decade rosary. It has a special cross, and has this unique history behind it with that regards the Irish penal period and their history when they weren't allowed to be Catholic. So it has a really cool history behind it. Anyways, he showed it to me, like in the sacristy, before we were going out to serve mass, and I was just like, man, this is so cool. I mean, it just looked how heavy it was, how beautiful it was. I loved it. The first time I saw it. So, anyways, we served mass, whatever, and then my mom wants to buy one for my dad for like a Christmas present. So she gets one, and then actually it turns out that we give it to him early because I think he caught on to the gift earlier
Oh, sure.
than we were trying to get it to him. Which actually I think if he didn't catch on to it, Rings of the Lord never would have happened. But anyways, he caught on to the gift, so of course we give him the gift. Um, and then afterwards, Steve and I are just talking, and I'm like, dude, you should totally start a business selling these rosaries because I was just like, they're so awesome. And I think at that point he had already given me one of the ones he made. So anyways, we're talking about it, and I'm like, you should start. And he's like, I don't have the time to do it. And then I actually was just like, well, then I'll just start it because I mean, I was like, these rosaries need to be shown to the world. They're just so awesome. So after that, I Steven, the nice part about it was that Steven had already done the prototype. So it was like the product was already set. So I didn't have to do
Sure.
anything except just learn how to make the rosary and get it to the people.
Sure.
So I start making the rosaries. And then after that, basically for the past, I think it's 4 years now,
Wow.
we've been making these rosaries and selling them. And now my brother's making rosaries. Now he's a lot better at making the rosaries than I am. Just he's naturally really good at it, which is very nice
Nice.
for me because I can't do all like the with the rosaries. Sometimes it can get very specific to like how you're making the knots and everything, and he just does a really good job with it. So I'm super grateful that he does such a good job with it.
Sure.
But yeah, that's basically been the last 4 years with Rings of the Lord.
Awesome. So I mean, well, quickly, I mean, Wings of Lord started during COVID. 4 years that was during COVID.
Yes, yes, it was. It
Okay.
was. Yeah, that it's 4 years because we started the I think it was in October of 2020. So
Really
during COVID. Yeah.
awesome. Shortly, I started the podcast, and the thought came to me well in December of 2020, and my first episode was in March 21. So, I mean, it's really a privilege to do the podcast. I'm sure it's really a privilege and
Hmm.
honor for you to make
Definitely.
rosaries. I mean,
Definitely.
I
Definitely.
know I know the COVID 19 was a lot. It was really bad, but like they said, a lot of good things came out of COVID, and
Yeah.
that was one of them. Because
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, in during the COVID, everyone was looking for hope and maybe not touring to God and maybe like they should have. So yeah, that's really good thing to come out of it. So what really, why, I guess, there's not a pop-up question, follow-up question here, but why did you, how long, I guess, did you say yes to starting, taking over the business or starting the business right away?
Hmm.
Um, and if so, why? I mean, a lot of people might have been like, well, I don't have time either, Steven.
Yeah.
Send it to someone else. So why,
Yeah. Yeah.
why yes so fast?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's asked me that before. Um, I think it was yes so fast because I just love business in general. Like I find it
Sure,
super interesting. I think it's part of my nature. I think I was born with an entrepreneurial spirit. But also I just think that I love the rosary, that's for sure.
sure,
The rosary is just so awesome. And we started with just the Irish penal rosary, but now we have like the full rosaries, and I love the full rosaries. So I think that the quality of rosary, I just loved it so much. And like I think that Stephen's enthusiasm was very much like, well, then it was kind of just like, well, I can't do it. So then I think he almost was hinting at, well, why don't you do it?
sure,
And Stephen and I just are made like that, where it's like, well, why can't we just do it? So I think for me, it wasn't as much like I wanted to do it from the beginning. It didn't feel like I was being forced into it, and it didn't feel like it was something that I might not want to do. I've always loved business, and I love it when we're busy and having to make like hundreds of rosaries
sure.
during the months. So I love it. And yeah, it's just never something that I didn't want to do.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's truly God working through you. I mean, again,
Yeah.
so like I said, a lot of people would say, no, I don't have time, pass it on to someone else. So it's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Uh, so how has this deepened your love for Christ, his church, the rosary, and the devotion to Mary.
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest things is that I see some of the impact that my interviews have had on just normal Catholics.
Sure.
And I've seen a lot of my favorite thing about the business is really reading the reviews that people send in
Okay.
about the rosary. And oftentimes they give me like a paragraph of like their story and like the story like behind why they love the rosary so much. And for me, that is really one of like I'm just so humbled and like honored that like I can be a part of that process for them of like finding such a beautiful rosary and but like not only like the rosary but also like I'm so honored that they're praying like a Hail Mary with the rosary that me and my brother are making.
Wow.
So I think that a lot of it is kind of from like the inside looking out. It's kind of like, oh, holy cow! There's a lot of rosaries out there that people really love. Which to me it's that's almost the most baffling thing about it. Not the fact that like there's X amount of revenue. It's more like, holy cow, like there's that amount of rosaries and there's that amount of stories out there now because of these just beautiful rosaries. And like the fact that God thought that I could do it and that like he called me to do it, like that is something that's just it's so humbling. Um, but also I would say that uh, I think it's made me love the rosary more in a way that I
Sure.
haven't. I don't know if I wouldn't have loved it as much if I didn't have the business, but I think I definitely see where it's like on nights that I don't want to say the rosary, where I still say the rosary.
Sure.
And now I don't pray the rosary every day. I try to pray a decent amount, but I do think that the rosary, the fact that you own a rosary business, like you should be praying the rosary, like you should be entrusting this to Mary. And I think that that has almost deepened my relationship with the rosary as well. And of course, as my mom and I have been talking about lately, I love talking about like the mysteries of the rosary and how they apply to our life, like the sorrowful mysteries, and
Right.
how you can put those mysteries of Jesus, like, or you can put that sorrowful time Jesus had, and you can put it onto like the lives that we experience because we all have sorrowful times, we all have joyful times, and we all have glorious times, and of course, like luminous times. So I think that a lot of it is the rosary is just so it's so rich in its meaning that it's kind of just I don't know if all of it was due to the business, but I definitely
Sure.
think some of it was due to the business.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I mean, no one, there's no such thing as a perfect Catholic. So I think a lot of
Yeah,
people are in the same boat. Everyone tries to pray the rosary every day, will, but I don't think a lot of people do.
yeah,
I pray the rosary pretty much every day. On my way into work. It's not the best
yeah.
time to pray because I'm driving. I'm paying more attention,
Hmm.
but it's a way to get it in. But yeah, I could be more devoted to it. And like you said, the sacred mystery and the mysteries of the rosary are something to really meditate on. Especially the sorrowful mysteries during Lent, especially.
Yes, yes.
It really brings you closer to Christ, and it really has you, just really brings you closer to Him, and really
Hmm.
um makes an impact on your life. So I
Yeah,
totally agree with that. So just kind of walk us through. You say you're humble and you really love reading the reviews. You really love helping doing making rosaries. Just kind of walk us through the business industry of it. I should say, like how you make
yeah,
them, where do you make
yeah.
them, how many can you make in one day?
Okay, that's a good question. So how I make them, a lot of it is I have different wholesalers for the materials. So for
Okay,
all of them, I mean, I have for the rings for the Irish Pinot Rosary, I buy those from one shop. For the silver rings, I have to go to a different shop to buy them. For the beads, I have to go on a website to buy those, and for the crosses and crucifixes and medals, like centerpieces, those also come from a different website. So a lot of the materials come from like all over.
okay,
I think it goes literally from coast to coast, like California to Maine. I think is where the materials come from. Um, so a lot of the time, my brother and Steven actually make a lot of rosaries because I'm usually doing the other side of the business.
sure.
And if I love helping when I can, and when I do, I would say I help a decent bit. But I just am not that good at doing the very detailed part of it, which is kind of ironic. So I kind of let Walker and Steven do that, and I try to do the tedious stuff whenever I help. Um, so that's really the process to like we get the materials, and then there's a lot of preparation that goes in before we have to actually make the rosary. So we have to have the paracord. We clip it. We burn the edges. For a lot of the brass beads, we deburr them to make sure they go smoothly across the paracord. For most of the brass beads, for two of the rosaries, we don't do that. And then for the silver one, for the silver beads, we kind of have to do the same thing, but we don't deburr all of them because all of them don't need it. Or if we do deburr all of them, it's kind of like just because we feel like it would be the better rosary experience.
Sure.
Then from there, we put all the materials together, we make the rosary, and then we ship it. I just print the label. Now that I'm 16, I drive the orders to the post office. I drop them off. Um, and what was your last question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
No. How many can you make in one day if you sit
Yes,
down and
yes.
make them?
That's a good question. So it really depends on the rosary. For the Irish Pinot rosaries, we could probably make, I would say, 10 an hour.
Really?
So we could probably make 80 Irish Pinot rosaries a day, if we were just to go from 9 to 5. But for the big rosaries, those are a little bit more time consuming. I would say we make, I don't know, 4 or 6 an hour. So it's quite different in how many we can make. But I would say if we were to do an equal amount of Irish Pinot rosaries and full rosaries, we could probably make about 50 rosaries in like a 9 to 5 period of time.
Gotcha. And they're all, I
Yeah.
mean, they're all handmade and everything.
Yes. Yes. We make like there's no machine equipment except like tools that we use to make the rosary.
Sure. No, I mean, I think it's really, like you said, I think I share with you the coin. It's really inspiring that someone's putting in the time, the effort, and really dedicated to
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
Because you
There's a
don't
lot
see
of
that.
effort put into the rosaries for sure.
Right. Absolutely. So, I mean, I know this kind of business, the thing was brought to you by your friend just before going out to solar mass, and I know from being a former altar server myself, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going through your mind, getting yourself prepared for mass. But going from that to now, where you're at right now in the business, to let's say 5 years down the road, I mean, where do you hope the business is? Do you think it's more of an e-commerce online store? You think it's more of like a brick and mortar store, with online stuff, or do you think it's more like a factory? What is your goal like 5 years down the road?
Yeah, 5 years down the road, I think that it would always be an e-commerce store. I don't think ever have a brick and mortar. Um, Now we might have to, if it ever gets big enough, we might have to get more space to make the rosaries, but
Sure.
we might have to get like, I don't know, more containers or something, or maybe even like set up a different room for the rosaries. I don't think we'll ever have a brick and mortar store though, just because I think being online is what Rings of the Lord is called to be. Just because I don't live in an area that's largely Catholic, it's largely Protestant in my area, so
Sure.
it wouldn't really make as much sense for the brick and mortar. But I think that 5 years from now, I would love it if Rings of the Lord, for Rings of the Lord, I want it to be just as much a ministry as it is a store.
Right.
So I want the Rings of the Lord, I guess you would say community, or like people who buy a rosary, to really love their rosary. And I don't want them to have to buy multiple rosaries a year. Like I don't want them to spend their money on multiple rosaries because it keeps breaking. I want them to have a rosary that they have and that they don't have to worry about. Like they know it's always going to be around, unless they lose it, of course, which
Right.
would be unfortunate. But I want the rosary, I want that rosary to be their rosary, and I want that. I think a lot of the problem I see sometimes is that these rosaries, they just kind of break a lot or they get tangled. So it's like, how do you use this? But for my rosaries, I want them to be very durable, but also I want them to like last a lifetime for for the person who's buying it.
Right.
And I want that to be like the reputation almost for Rings of the Lord, that like we don't want you buying 10 rosaries a year because they keep breaking. We want you to buy one rosary and then you're done. Uh, like
Right.
that's what we want the rosary experience to be like.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, and I try to carry a rosary everywhere in my pocket will, and I mean, it's like your phone. I mean, you put your phone in your pocket, you put your rosary in your pocket, and you put stuff in your pockets, and they kind of eat or make your phone joy, make the rosary joy, and they kind of wear, and yeah, they break, and
Yeah.
so I truly, salute you and having such durable rosaries because again, you don't want to be spending your money on 15 rosaries if you keep breaking them. So,
Yeah.
it's a good made in American product that's gonna last.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I agree. I agree.
yeah. So I had a question in my mind. Oh, um, so a couple more questions for wrap up the show is that you're 16 right now when we're recording this episode, and when the episode comes out. Actually, we found out before air that our birthdays are only 2 days apart, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what is your plan? Have you been thinking about college yet? I know you're still a couple years
Hmm.
out still. What is your um, what kind of business? I think you're going to go for business, but what type of business or degree that you're leaning towards right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a business degree. I right after college, if I want to go into business pretty quickly afterwards. I want to own my own business. I want to build up my own business. That's my goal right now. Now, of course, that could change in a couple years.
Sure.
I'm only 16, but right now that's the goal. And I also want to get, I also want to study theology in college just because I want to understand my faith more. I want to understand the Lord more because that is really, my dad has his master's in theology, and I've
Okay.
seen the beauty in understanding scripture on such a deep level. So if I want to get my business degree, but I also want to get a theology degree just because I think it's very important in today's world, especially with all the stuff going on. You want to be firmly rooted in Christ. And of course, you don't need to
Right.
have a theology degree to be firmly rooted in Christ. I'm not saying that at all. But for me, I think that that's something that I would really enjoy, and that's something I would be able to grow a lot in. And that's not for everybody. And I respect everybody else who doesn't need that. I find it tremendous. I find that they're very often the smartest people. You don't have to have all these degrees to be super smart and to know Christ. I think some of the people who are most in love with Christ are the more simple people. Um, but I would love to have a theology degree just to understand like scripture and stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
No, I mean, I think that's really great. I mean, you're still willing to learn more about it. I mean, I'm not saying that other people are not with not getting a theology degree, but I mean, I think that's a really good plan. And I mean, myself, I graduated last year with a marketing sales degree, so I uh I wasn't planning on doing that route, but that's where I went, and I didn't mind it. So yeah, plans change. But it's good that you know that you're at least going towards what you want. It's maybe
Hmm.
the path is still unclear in some areas, but it's really good that you know what you want and what the Lord is calling you to do. That's for sure. Um, so we'll quickly wrap up the show. Will where can people find you? Where can people
Hmm.
get in contact with you? Where can they buy the rosaries? And yeah,
The best place to buy the rosaries is on my website, which is ringsofthelord.com. Just how it sounds. No special spelling of the words. It's just exactly how it sounds. Ringsofthelord.com. If you want to contact me, there's a contact page on my website. I'm not the best at responding to emails quickly, but I will respond to it eventually, hopefully. Um, and buying my rosaries on my website is the best place. You could maybe buy it on my Etsy shop, but I don't love Etsy. So
sure.
if you would buy it on my website, I would appreciate that the most. Um, and yeah, I have an Instagram page that's linked on my website. So I would just go to my website for all the information because I think that's the most direct source, and that's like the most updated source of information on Rings of the Lord.
Gotcha. And was there what? Well, I mean, last question here, but was there
Hmm.
any inspiration about from the Lord of the Rings? Or
Definitely, definitely,
okay,
yeah.
that's what.
So I love Lord of the Rings. And when we were thinking of names, the thing that sticks out about the Irish penal rosary is the ring that ties the entire rosary together.
Okay,
That's basically like I think that that's almost like, of course, the crucifix is extremely important. I would say the most important aspect of any rosary. But I think the ring of the Irish penal rosary makes it so distinct. And I love the rings of the Lord. And actually, Stephen came up with the name too, so I
okay.
can't take credit for that.
No, just before, I mean, we're doing work today, thinking about the show and getting prepared for the show. I kept calling it Lord of the Rings. I'm like, no, it's
Yeah,
Wings of the Lord. So I mean, I'm
it's act
pretty,
yeah,
yeah,
it's actually funny. Instead of calling the book Lord of the Rings, almost everybody in our household calls like the book and the movies Rings of the Lord movies and
really,
stuff like that. And that happens a couple times every now and then. So
sure.
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Lord of the Rings is a good movie, so I don't
It
blame you
is.
with the inspiration with that.
Yeah.
Will Henry again, wingsofthelord.com, or we'll put that link to the comments description down below, Will, so people can find it easier.
Yeah.
And yeah. So first of all, lastly, Will, just thank you again for your time, your dedication to this, and just I mean, really, it's inspiring to me, and I'm sure a lot of listeners out there that you're doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time today. I hope to have you back on the show again.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Will Henley right there again. Again, the website down below, get in contact with them. Tell them that you listen to the show and you are by Rosaries. And again, Rosaries, give it to your friends, give it to your family. Put one in your car, put one in your pocket. Have one in your nightstand, all that great stuff. wingsoftheLord.com. And again, last episode in here, so say goodbye to the original Studio T, everyone. And God willing, we'll see you next week from a different place. God willing. Go to the sacraments, stay in the state of grace, and we'll see you next time on Catholic Table Talk.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Catholic Table Talk podcast, where everything Catholic is on the table. Don't forget to subscribe to Catholic Table Talk on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes delivered directly to you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern.